Ah, here we are, loves. The last day of our last convening, the sunset, but also the sunrise. Thank you, ML, for so eloquently having us feel that in our bodies. Lots of feelings today. And it feels so moving, so powerful, so meaningful to be able to spend it with all of you. Thank you. And then also keeping in mind all of the folks who wanted to be here but could not, but who have been such an important part of this community. We wanted to talk today as our last conversation, as part of the work it is we've been up to this last cycle, this pandemic cycle, this cycle marked by grief, marked by transformation, that we wanted to talk about care. We wanted to talk about cultures of care. And this has been such a meaningful part of MEV for me personally, this politic of wholeness that was seeded in Cohort 1 and has just continued to deepen and grow and evolve over time. So much of what violence and white supremacy and heteropatriarchy does to us is it forces us to dissociate from ourselves, to compartmentalize ourselves, to disconnect us from our ancestors and from each other. And it teaches us that some parts of ourselves are acceptable while other parts are not. And we see these trade-offs all the time in the nonprofit sector. Which strategies are considered winnable and fundable? What is understood as professional and who is considered a leader? What stories survivors are allowed to tell and which stories and languages are silenced. And so in MEV, it has been such a joy to be in this space that has a collective understanding that how we can disrupt violence is by embracing the whole rather than the binary or the hierarchy. And so much of what we've been committed to in this work is to that wholeness. And it shows up in so many of our practices in the spiritual space that ML, Gina, and Latishia just opened for us in the physical practice it is that we've been doing here in person and in this virtual space. Beloved community, bringing spirit back to movement, centering joy, healing justice, disability justice, all of that practice, family programming has been so much about being able to re-recognize our wholeness, both as ourselves and in our communities. And to bring it back to yesterday's conversation, that so much of what we have learned and relearned and continue to relearn about care for our bodies, care for our communities, care for the land, so much of how we have learned that comes from Black, Indigenous, and immigrant people of color communities, queer and trans communities, undocumented communities that have always had to find a way to find our own path due to centuries of system failures and knowing that the state will never care for us. And so this is how we enter this conversation in being able to honor and acknowledge what has been built. I would love to invite Maura to come in as someone who has been here at MEV before there was even an MEV, who has been instrumental in its design. When we talk about we are the ones we've been waiting for, Maura's been waiting for us. She was here from the start and she was waiting for us to catch up to what it is that the vision it is that she saw about where we could be. And so Maura, I invite you in to share, how have you seen MEV and other organizations, the many organizations that you've worked with and touched, and leaders it is that you've been so instrumental in their journeys. How have you seen them shift towards liberatory systems of care? And how have you seen those shifts change what is possible for our movements?
Hi, y'all. We're here. It's been such a blessing. Yeah, this has been such a blessing. to grow together over the last 12 years. And part of the invitation that I want to make today is to consider that we're not at the end of MEV, but actually at the middle. And so to invite you to consider that MEV is a generation, is a 25-year project, and that we're literally at the exact middle of that project right now, this moment. That's how it feels to me. And so I just want to invite you to stand where I'm standing. Yeah. And I'm in the presence of so many of my teachers and so many of my teachers' teachers. So I have to say in this space to Becky, who's my aunt in this work, my auntie in this work. And I have to say, to the other sisters and siblings that are on this call and in this movement, who have been building this movement out of love and love and love and love and labor, I have to say thank you for everything that you've taught me and for the opportunity to share what you've taught and to extend what you've taught at scale. It should not be extraordinary, but it is extraordinary. So some of what I'm feeling in this moment that's hard to articulate is some of how I've seen you all and felt you all and your people shift. Being able to look up from our tables and being able to look at each other. Just that part, right? Just that part. Being able to really feel in our own bodies and in our collective bodies the power of care. And we've moved past self and collective care as a binary or a false binary, right? We know that when we say care, caridad, when you say it in your tongue, we know what we mean. The condition of care, of us all having what we need, all being well. And the power of space. You felt it. We're feeling it now, of the space of a single breath, the space of 3 days, the space of a 2-hour broadcast, right? To connect to ourselves, to each other, to remember what's important, and to decide together who and what to place at the center, knowing that there are always multiple centers. And we've learned that together. We've taught that to each other. And I know that y'all have felt, and I know I have felt, that the conditions of space and care create greater possibility for strategic thinking. You know, I'm what's called pressure prompted. I like to do things at the last minute. So that can make me think that those are the best conditions for my strategic thinking. Anybody else like that? Oh, I do my best thinking, you know, at the last minute. Right. And we've learned to do that, and we've learned to do it well, and we've survived. And actually, and we know this, the conditions for our greatest thinking, our greatest strategic knowing, our greatest strategic remembering, our greatest ability to hold the horizon and each other simultaneously and move forward together from a strong center, come when we have space and when we have care. And for me, MEV has been that place of space and care and strategic thinking, which is not also to say principled struggle and sometimes painful growth and growing pains and a lot of group dynamics. But for me, it's been that space, 12 years of that space. And the impact on my own leadership and the body of work that I have the opportunity to co-create, steward, and the impact on all of y'all and your organizations has been, from what I've seen, extraordinary. I see MEV and the work that MEV meaning a network of the movements, and MEV meaning us, have been part of what has shifted, what is shifting in our movements, including creating space where our community members are organizing in ways that we didn't imagine 12 years ago. 12 years ago, we didn't imagine that folks inside of philanthropy would be talking about unionizing because of the working conditions of philanthropy. That was not on my bingo card, right? But here we are, because as we create organizations that have greater space and greater care, our folks are doing what we naturally do, which is we organize, right? We organize. So I have just seen such extraordinary growth and felt it on the individual level, felt it on our collective level as we've grown through all sorts of incredible conditions and painful moments together. And in movement, the folks that we've been walking with and our teachers. So I really felt us collectively embody the principles that for me were once words on a page that I was curious about. And they now feel like living principles that are organizing how I lead, how we lead, and where we lead. So that's where I'll start.
Thank you so much, Maura. Thank you so much for honoring the lineage of this work, of naming the teachers and their teachers who have brought us here, and for naming this as a start. Like this is a place it is where we've grown and learned so much, and yet there is still so much more it is that can be shared and said. I would love to, Maura, for have you stay here in this circle. And I wanted to invite Alexis in, Alexis from Cohort 3, and as part of the team at Resonance Network. Hi, my dear. Welcome, welcome. And also wanted to invite in Nadiah from Cohort 4, from Heart Women and Families. And wanted to, hello. Wanted to give you space. Oh, I apologize. I'm supposed to be saying my name before I speak. This is Priscilla. And wanted to invite you all to also reflect on this. How have you and your organizations and your leadership and your work and all the partnerships you're a part of, have you seen folks move towards liberatory care? And what does that open up for us?
So I was looking at Nadiah to see if she's gonna make me go first. This is Alexis. I use she, her pronouns. It's horribly unfair to be asked to do this when I cannot stop crying. ML, Priscilla, Maura. Thanks a lot. You know, well, honestly, I've cried more in thanks to MEV than I probably ever have in my life. I came into the cohort space with like such low expectations of what it means to work in this movement that my coach and I mean, Sujin was my coach. And Sujin like belly laughed at me, like, sis, you held the bar so low for the organization that you were in. The conditions, and the conditions of my organization were not unique. The conditions of my organization were like, it's just dominant culture, nonprofit, industrial complex playing out. And I cried many days in cohort space. A story that many of you know that the newer cohorts may not know is that like somehow in the universe, tragedy always happens. And the kinds of tragedies that we acknowledged in our opening yesterday, like happened twice during my cohort experience. And the first was the Charleston massacre. And we were in our opening days of our first convening, and there's 40-ish people in a circle, with everybody that was present. And we're checking in, and I'm terrified because my experience in doing this work is that the depth of the trauma that Black people experience in this country just could not be touched and held by people who did not share that experience. I lived that over and over and over again. And in that circle, as we were checking in, some people were aware of what had happened. All Black folks in the circle knew what had happened. And we were broken. And I was sensing into like what is about to happen in this space. Like, what do I get to say? How honest can I be about how I'm experiencing this moment, about my like questioning whether I could trust the people who were holding the space and in the room with me. And we went around a circle, just checking in. And as we checked in, it became clear that one of the ways that we were cultivating care was that we were going to give this as much time as it needed. The practice of like, we are going to stop everything and give this as much time as it needed was like, that's care that I have never gotten back from a institution, care that I've never gotten back from like an organization, right? And the story of what had happened in Charleston became like, it came into the room in bits and pieces as multiple people checked in. And we got to the moment when my sister, Christine Davidson, had like heard enough check-ins to put all of the pieces together. Christine's an Anishinaabe sister, and she was like, hold up, right? Like putting the pieces together, understanding the depth of our pain. And she offered us something that became like a gift of care that like held our cohort together. And she taught us a song from her tradition. And that song lives in my cells, y'all. Like that song, like we were protesting something at the Supreme Court, and I hear like Indigenous relatives, they're singing this song, and it was just like, it was like a herald, right? It was like on a cellular level, it's like, I see you. I see you. We are relatives. And I care about your pain. I care about your trauma. And we're going to be in it with you all. That experience was an entry point for me. It was the beginning of me having an embodied sense of what I wanted to create in my life, what I wanted to create in my movement work, what I wanted to create in the spaces that I held, like so much so that like, I think what took root in me is like absolute refusal that it would be any other way. I quit my job because, you know, MEV. I quit my job and moved into this role to help lead this network, residence network, that was born out of the work and leadership of the first and early cohorts of this project. And our work there has been to be in daily practice of like like so many of us have experienced MEV as like this unicorn space, right? And I feel like in resonance, we're just like, no, how does this become the world that we build, right? How do we build a world by, yes, like intensely committing to our radical imagination to continue to think about what that looks like, and to be fiercely devoted to what that means to practice right here and right now. So even when y'all looked at us sideways, like, what the hell are they doing? Like, we were cultivating care, right? When there was times where we were moving really, really slowly. We were moving really, really slowly because it mattered that we were creating something that is going to last. And something is going to last because we're not killing ourselves doing this work, right? But that we're committed to living like this. Isn't the future isn't just what I want for our descendants. The future is what I want for us, because I want to be here. I want to be here, right? I want to be here to like retire with y'all. I want to be here to like see y'all's grandkids and great grandkids, right? I want to like, we are family, which is why like this is such an emotional moment. Like, it didn't hit me yesterday or the day before. Today it hit me. It's like, oh, here we are, right? Thank you for Maura for like, we're just in the middle, right? Like our work continues together, but the intentionality about cultivating relationship, cultivating how we move through principal struggle, cultivating like being hurt and bouncing back and repairing. Like, I feel like I got my grippy socks in some of that, like in this space, right? And so I have deep gratitude for this. Nadiah?
Oh, Alexis love. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. And I'm going to name that I'm just speaking whatever comes to my heart, because this space is really, it's really special to me. And I know Monica knows it. Alexis actually knows this too, because we're on this little WhatsApp group together and we're always talking. Deciding to stay virtual was literally something that I lost days of sleep over because I could not decide. And I have a therapist friend that I was debriefing with as I was making the decision. And the reason that I made the decision is because my firstborn is about to leave for college next week. And she said to me, I was shaming myself for losing so many brain cells over this decision. And she said to me, no, I actually see why this decision is so hard for you, because, you're getting ready to bid farewell to your firstborn that you've raised, while also the community and the home and the space that gave you life is also in some ways transitioning. And I really appreciate, Maura, your reframing of it and saying that, and also Priscilla, your reframing of it and saying, it may be sunsetting, but there's also a sunrise. And that's really beautiful for me to think about. I wrote about in my anthology, like why this space is so important to me. And part of that story is because when I applied for the cohort, there's been many times that I've been kind of ready to throw in the towel, but I was really ready to throw in the towel in that moment. And that was because I was just, Muslim philanthropy wasn't getting it. Mainstream philanthropy wasn't getting it. Mainstream movement spaces weren't getting it, right? And everyone was giving me, unsolicited advice about all the ways that I was doing it wrong and all the ways that I could be doing it right if only I listened to them and took strategic direction from them. And I mean, it was just a gift. It was like literally a gift to me to be able to come to this space And I remember Maura earlier this week, you said something like welcome home, and you know, I don't want to be like overly sappy or overly cheesy about it, but that's really what it feels like, because you all gave me language to articulate what was always in my heart and what was always something that I believed in my core. And that was that I believed that nonprofit spaces don't have to be oppressive, and that philanthropy doesn't have to be so restrictive, and that, you know, working moms and caregivers can actually contribute in meaningful ways and in beautiful ways without having to choose between their families. And, you know, I desperately wish that you know, timing's everything. And I know that the timing of when I came into the MEV space, it was the perfect timing for us. And it was exactly where I needed to be at the time that I needed to be. But I daydream about what it would have felt like to have that kind of care given to me as a young mother, and as a mother who was trying to do right by my family and give them the care that they, you know, that I wanted to give them, while also building the organization that I wanted to build. And so, yeah, so I've lost my train of thought. I don't know. I mean, like, my gratitude is to all of you. And, you know, you are some of my greatest teachers. And, you know, Maura, Monica, Priscilla, Trina, Rachael, I mean, you all are some of literally my greatest teachers, and you have my prayers all the time. I cannot tell you how often I think of you all. And Michelle, who's my coach, I recently, Michelle should be really happy to hear this. I texted her or sent her a message about this, but I remember when we first met, you know, we would have all these coaching calls, and I would, you know, be like, oh, but, you know, there's this happening, and you know, there's this decision I have to make. And she'd always, you know, very compassionately hold me and say, what would be a third way? And I hated that. Like, it would like push me so out of my comfort zone. And I'd be like, what is she talking about? A third way? And now it's all I do. Like, my team will come and they will try to problem solve, or they'll present like, you know, only 2 solutions. And I find myself saying, what will be a third way? And I find myself getting irritated when there's not a third way, or when there's not a third way being presented. And so, you know, just this transformation that has happened in the ways that I am able to think about that. Maura, you mentioned this in your conversation earlier, the idea of multiple centers, that has really expanded the ways in which I have thought about all the things, including, you know, when leading a directly impacted staff and working for directly impacted communities, and being able to build spaces that include all of them and not just some of them. And so you know, to Alexis's point, like, one last thing that I've connected the dots with Michelle is also, like, you know, to this point about like, when are you ready to transition, and do you want to transition, and why don't you want to transition? You know, intellectually, my org's ready, you know, like, I'm going on sabbatical, by the way, y'all. But like, my org's ready. And you know, in a lot of ways, I'm ready. And, you know, one of the things that I connected the dots with Michelle was that, like, you know, I built this for space for others, but I also built it for myself. And that's why it is so emotionally difficult to even think about, you know, what a world would be like to transition from a space like this. But, you know, that being said, there are other ways of being in relationship with the MEV space and the spaces that we've built as well. And y'all just really have, you know, and I can say even my team has benefited from all the ways. And it's just, I see the difference in the ways in which communities are talking about these issues because of the language we've been able to equip them with. And that is my sincerest and ultimate gratitude to all of you guys for just being able to give us the language of things like simultaneity and, you know, death without drowning, and, you know, all of these community agreements that we have that, you know, it's just, we taught a bunch of national group of leaders like last year, you know, an immersive course on like preventing gender-based violence in their community. And after one session, the ways in which they were using those terms, which of course we gave MEV all the credit for, but like the ways in which they were, you know, practicing those terms and, you know, being in community with each other to be in practice of those agreements. It was just such a beautiful thing to see, and to see how it's been transformative for us. So I'm going to stop talking because I've kind of rambled, but it's just been so beautiful to be a part of this.
Thank you, everyone. It reminds me about how isolating the work can be, and under what terrible conditions it is that we are expected to work under, and yet people persist with so much love and care and clarity around what is needed. So thank you both for sharing. Wanted to see, Rachael, if you wanted to share anything about the community agreements. It really came out of the work that you and Monica and Heidi had created. So I just wanted to offer up a space if you wanted to join.
Thank you. Sure. You know, always, yeah, it's really good to see you, Rachael, Ibrahim, she, her speaking. Really good to be with you all. My heart is racing at the moment, not because I'm nervous, but like I feel so full. I feel so much gratitude and excitement to be here with you all. When I think about care and I think about these community agreements, you know, just the affirmation of how they affect how we build community and how we create space. The attribution that is always given is it's just very meaningful. And I always got to give attribution to our teachers. And so I always lift up that it was being in the workshop of the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond and the Undoing Racism workshop that gave us the language to continue to identify and name what dynamics we see in spaces that can be named through community agreements. And so always grateful for, you know, my teachers and No Quick Fix and some of the language that I learned from them, the liberated zone. And then that gave us the space, Monica and I, the space to see our experiences in our own organizing and how the dynamics that we would see in the spaces that we're facilitating, and how we're like, yeah, so death without drowning, because our people are drowning on so many levels. And so how can we hold a space where people can swim at different depths at the same time, and how that actually creates, that is care, that is how we hold community as care. That gives us the space to wade in the water, to dive deep, to go the distance, to do a triathlon if you need to. And also, like, not everyone has to do that, and not everyone is able to, or prepared to, or has the resources to. And so how do we then create the space for that? So thank you.
Thank you, Rachael. Thank you for that. This is Priscilla speaking again. One of the other agreements it is that we wanted to lift up is where it says urgent action, no quick fix. And that was something that was explicitly taught to us by Black and Brown trans women in Cohort 4, who said that actually our lives are at stake, that the violence towards us, that it is our bodies who are bearing the brunt of that. And so actually we understand there's no quick fix, and action is needed from the community. that we can no longer stand by and or say that, well, we're focused over here and so we're not going to pay attention over there, or that we'll work on trying to find solutions and liberation for this community and not for the whole. And so really want to lift that up, want to name Monica James as someone from Cohort 4 who really led the way on that. And so it's another beautiful way to see the evolution of this. With Rachael's history and then how they continue to evolve and grow among the community. Thank you, Laurel, for sharing. We can go back to the gallery. I wanted to see whether or not there was anyone else who wanted to join this conversation. I feel I can see your faces in the gallery, and like for every single person there, I can think of something it is that I've learned from you or that I've heard from you, a story it is that you've told, a way it is that you have indelibly changed the way it is that we show up and do this work. So I would really love to invite movement maker, facilitator, consultant, practitioner. If you would like to share anything, please just raise your hand and Laurel will bring you into the circle. I know there's been a lot going on in the chat too, that folks are sharing a lot of appreciations, a lot of resonance with what folks have said about all the gifts and the transformations, shouting out particular people. Oh, I see MJ. If you turn on your video, we can bring you in. If you can't turn on your video right now. Oh, okay, there you are. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Testy 1, 2, 3. Am I on the air? Oh.
Yes, we got you loud and clear.
Alrighty. Yes. Oh my God. I don't know where to begin. I'm gonna keep it traditional in my MEV self. Every time I show up, I'm always like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to, get. I don't know what to expect. I'm wondering what's happening. And, and it's just all the exciting energy of being in such a high energy, well-balanced space, but yet still complicated. And I am just, wow, I can't even really bring my words together, but there are some things that I can say is that thank you. Thank you to each and every last one of you that came before me, created that space, helped lift that space, helped guide that space, to be a space for me and me, the daughter of an alley mechanic, mother, a Black warfare queen from Chicago, Illinois, me, a Black tranny, a Black jailhouse tranny, a Black woman, a Black man, a Black youth, a dropout, like so many things for me. And that space was open up for me. I had access to that space. And while I was very premature for that space, but that wasn't the focus. The focus was that I would soon be able to digest that space. And for me, like I'm an open book. My heart stayed open. And some people say that's violent. You shouldn't do that. You should cover yourself. You should display less vulnerability. Learn how to channel it. And I'm doing what I do. And that space has fostered and facilitated and held and navigated me to be able to do just that. And that space is broad, it's diverse, it's complicated, it's sweet, it's fierce, it's high energy, it's low energy. Sometimes we're rocking all over the place, threatening to tip. That space has been that, and I have contributed to that space because I had access to that space. And I'm just overjoyed that a Black trans woman like myself was able to sow seeds to further the education, to further the knowledge, further the connections, no matter how complicated and low budget, low rent it may have been. That space has been created, and I'm humble for that. I'm humble for that. And I do believe that we can all swim together, just at different levels. I believe in that. And I believe that that is okay. That is okay. But because we're swimming at different levels, mean that you weigh any less than me. Your life is still of great value. And that's why we're here. That's why we're creating this leg of access. And so that was done for me. And, you know, I am who I am. And that's all I can ever be. And I'm grateful for having that access to space to be all that and more. And the ways that my life has matured, personally, professionally, organizationally, spiritually, emotionally, because it's all right to have emotions. So I am so grateful and humble for that. And Maura, Alexis, Rachael, Nadiah, like, I know you know, you said some things for me today. It's just like, wow, you know, I built that for myself. And I too am that Black trans woman. I built that for myself just as well as I built it for my community. And to build it with quality, integrity, I had to put my heart there. And detachments are hard. They're complicated. Breakups are hard. And I've learned, if I've learned nothing else, I've learned to do my best to ground my breakups. And in doing that, I don't, I go deep, but I don't drown. It's okay to act in haste, but just make sure that it is, there is a third option. And I'm grateful for that. I hear these things, and as a Black trans woman, on behalf of all the Black trans women that stand with me, this is what healing justice, wellness, economic wellness, and safety looks like for all identified Black women and girls. And I gracefully check, and thank you so much.
This is Priscilla speaking. Thank you, everyone. This conversation just, you know, I have no doubts about what will happen after MEV closes, after MEV sunsets, and what that sunrise will look like. I have no doubt that it's going to be beautiful, and that we're going to stay together, and that we're going to keep learning and growing together. As part of this moving towards liberatory systems of care, I want to invite in some of our staff members who are here on the call. I'm going to invite in Ramelcy and Latishia. If you can, you know, raise your hand and turn your video on and make it easier, bring in the spotlight. Hello, hello. We have had lots of amazing team members at MEV over the year, and at every stage, they have continued to shepherd amazing breakthroughs of what is possible here. Everything it is that people have experienced this whole last cycle, the cycle before, is due to this amazing team. Sequoia is off doing some wellness and care for herself right now. She's also been instrumental, but that's why she's not here. We support that. Take care of yourselves. And so I wanted to invite Latishia and Ramelcy to share what are some of the breakthroughs it is that you have been a part of here at MEV that bring you hope and possibility.
Hey y'all, Latishia, Shibe, Aja. I was looking at ramelcy to see if they wanted to start first or, but I'm gonna go ahead. I've been loving this whole conversation. I missed just a couple minutes of it when we were transitioning from the Rais this morning because I had to take a moment to, process the spirit, as y'all saw, spirit tried to take over a little bit. But I'm so thankful, MJ, for you, for the way that you are just always just honest and heart forward, and thankful for all the folks who have spoken so far. So for me, the ways that I've seen some breakthroughs, both that I've been a part of and that I've learned from others and being on staff at MEV, actually started with my very first, with my application. So when I applied to the position, one of the questions they asked was, what most excites you, like people usually do, and how would the position build on my work, my movement work to date? And one of the things that I said was that I was excited to work somewhere that embodies the principles of healing justice. Because that was like front and center in my application when I applied, that would be part of my role. And I was like, yes, sign me up immediately. For those of you who don't know, a big part of my movement work since my early 20s has been spiritual. I am a faith leader, and I have been a movement chaplain in the reproductive justice movement and movement for Black lives. And I always felt like I had to choose a little bit, or like I was on the periphery, because I was always that person trying to like bring spirit into things, and people would be like, we got to focus on the strategy and this, and I'm like, and spirit is a part of the strategy and healing is a part of the strategy. And I always felt like I was like pushing against the grain, and here was this place that was like, you don't have to push, you can just bring it in, and we want you to bring it in and bring all of it and help to foster it and grow it, and we got the money for that, and we're going to fund it, and you can create, there's people who want to do spirit space and all of these things. And so for me, that was life-changing. And the last 3.5 years of working here, starting with coming in towards the end of Cohort 4's time and getting to learn from and work with people like Naima Efia, who's on the call, and Heidi Maria Lopez, and Patricia Torres, and other folks who have taught me a lot about the history and legacy of healing justice, and ways that it has always been part and parcel to the work that we do, and how we show up. And it's why we could, all of this week, begin every single day with grounding in cultural and spiritual practice, and knowing that that is integral to what we call liberation work and to ending violence, because one of the biggest violences that has been committed against us as a people is the stealing of our cultural and spiritual practices, is the colonizing of them, and making and forcing us to follow other spiritual and cultural practices that are not in our bodies, that are not in alignment with who we are. And so the very act of reclaiming them, the very act of bringing them into spaces that are deemed corporate or capitalistic or nonprofit industrial complex, whatever you want to call them, to say, actually, the ways of my people say that part of liberation is that I'm going to pray now. Part of liberation is that we're going to dance now. Part of liberation is that there's going to be a pause to recognize that, oh, this horrendous thing happened, and so it's not going to be business as usual. I really don't care what your agenda says. We need to take a moment to pause, to have a vigil, to do et cetera, to have healing sessions. Folks on staff will tell you that I say this all the time. For me, when we're talking about the path to liberation, the goal, the what, it's important, yes, but for me, the more important thing is the how, because if we get to liberation, whatever this called definition of liberation is, and we're bruised and we're broken and we hate each other and we can't breathe and we don't know how to have joy or pleasure, then what was the point? Then to me, that's not liberation. And so care, we have to care for each other. The last thing I'll say, pass it to ramelcy, is Sequoia often talk about the ways that we've like overemphasized self-care at the expense of communal care. And that is something that being in this community and rooting more in MEV has really taught me and helped me with, because I realized I was a person who was swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction of like self-care in this way that was becoming individualistic. But the thing is that if we're choosing self-care at the expense of the rest of our people, then that too can't work, right? And so how is self-care and community care working together to achieve, right, what it is that we're looking for in true nonviolence? Because if I'm just worried about myself, then I'm still going to be enacting violence, right? Like was talked about on the conversation yesterday, that we're just going to end up recreating the thing that we're trying to destroy if we're not careful. And so really holding self and community care together has been something that I think has been really powerful for me at my time at MEV. And I will pass it to ramelcy.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? This is ramelcy speaking. Okay. I'm going to share in English in this moment. Thank you, Latishia. What do I want to say? I think what's present right now is, I feel like one of the breakthroughs has been like, what does it mean to be in service as like a political action? Yeah, as a person who grew up Catholic, and service has always been part of like my educational experience, like it's always been very, or not always, but in those times it was very apolitical. It's like you do things because you care about other people and not like systems are failing these people and that's why we care for them, or we care for them because they are far away from home and they don't know where they are, or they have lost their language, or they don't have access to the language here, like, or these people have been forced to migrate, you know? There's so much that, yeah, service becomes very apolitical. And so I think I'm really grateful to be here and have been practicing what does it mean to be in service in a very political way? What does it mean to gather people and to say, if we want trans women of color in our cohort, how do we ensure their safety? How do we ask them the question that they need to be asked so that they can get their whole? How do we actually set resources aside so that they can travel with people? And how do we offer that to our other priority communities as well, to Indigenous and Native women, to non-binary folks, to genderqueer folks? And like, I just think I've been invited to like live my politic even more in a way. I call it, you know, I'm saying in service in a political action, right? In a political way, but outside of MEV space, I also call it background bitches. Cause I'm like, this is a legacy of people who cook. These are the legacy of people who take care of other folks' kids so that they can show up to movement. This is the legacy of people who say, actually, I'm gonna clean your house because you have 100 things on your plate. This is the legacy of people who say, I'm gonna run your laundry for you, you know? Yeah, and I will say, like, in this moment, I would be lying to say if I'm not tired, you know? And so also the reminder that like people who provide care deserve the care that they're giving constantly, you know? Heidi talked about like changing the material conditions of who we say is important and centering that we are the people who are also important, right? Like if we're talking about communities that are divested from, that's not outside of me. If we're talking about people who are facing systemic violence on the everyday, that's not outside of me. And I talk a lot about the Bronx, which is occupied Lenape and Wampajir land. I talk a lot about the Bronx as a place that has politicized me and helped me ground in where I am. And so if I'm talking about care for other people and I'm taking a walk in the middle of the day and I know, and I'm seeing people who are unwell, who are houseless because the city has failed them. If I'm seeing people who are struggling with addiction because the city has failed them, and these are people who look like us, then that's really hard. Like that's hard to say, I'm gonna come back on this call and just say, I'm going to provide all the care, right? So I just think also is being more honest about the conditions that we're living and working in, even as we're saying that we're trying to change the conditions for someone else. And that radical empathy is part of our care, but it's also exhausting. So I just want to say that. And I also want to say, practicing language justice, no matter what language you're speaking, has been transformative. I feel like we've also made a nook where spirit and Blackness and indigeneity and land has gotten to like blossom. Like, I don't think that it would have been possible without Monica Dennis. I don't think it would have been possible without any of us who are working on it. And I just want to say that, like, I think the way that we are practicing, I'm not saying it's the newest thing in the world. And I'm saying it's some real ass motherfucking shit. I want to know how that was interpreted. Like, una cosa real, okay? Una cosa que se siente, que se vive.
Something that you feel it, that you feel it.
Like, I think that we are doing something incredibly like radical and transformational, if not for anyone, for ourselves. So I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you for letting us inherit a home that we have not lived in as long as y'all. You know, there was some busted pipes in the basement. There was a little bit of cockroaches in the back. You know, we didn't say nothing because we didn't want to be rude. But just know that we helped like steward and love this home as best as we could as the folks who were coming in a particular time. So thanks for inviting me in, and I appreciate y'all.
This is Priscilla speaking. Y'all, Monica and I get to work with these people every day. Every day we get to come in and be real with each other, be vulnerable with each other, you know, steward this work, figure out how is it that we do better by each other and for ourselves. And it is just an incredible blessing. Y'all don't even know. I'm going to miss this team so incredibly much. And we know that Monica, y'all, is on the phone. She can't really join right now, but we love you. Shouting you out every minute we can. For the few minutes that we have left, we know that this work is done through an extended team. It's a big team. We got the core team that is doing this on the day-to-day. And we have this whole big ass team that is also working with everyone and making it happen. A big part of this has been there's the OD coaches, the designers, facilitators, graphic recorders, like it's a whole crew of folks. So I did want to invite, if any of those folks would like to come in and join, please do. I see Michelle on this call. I see Ingrid on this call. I see Claudia. You know, please, if you are interested, raise your hand. I see Kristen, Mimi, folks who've been here. So we have a couple more minutes if anyone wants to join. Michelle, come on in.
Hello, friends. Whew. All the feels. I love you all so much, and I'm so grateful. I mean, first, I just want to share my gratitude for my own learning journey as part of this community. I've been doing leadership for a long time, and I feel like MEB has reintroduced me to other ways of knowing. And so I'm on an apprentice journey around decolonizing leadership. And it's because of you all. And so I just want to share my deep gratitude, you know, to Maura and Monica and Rachael and Becky and Nan. And this is to all of you, Nadiah and Shanaz, and to Katina and Sarah, and Norma Long. And I actually want to share some gratitude to Farah Atanis and Black Women's Blueprint. I do have her permission. I'm going to share a little bit in the anthology. But a breakthrough moment for me happened in 2015. I had done some learning with so many of you around self-care and collective care with the teachings of Norma. And I was with Farah and Black Women's Blueprint in Brooklyn and we were talking about self-care, and she said, self-care is bullshit. It's bullshit. It's a way for the patriarchy to get us to opt out of the work. And if I stop, people die. If I stop, people die. And she was right. And I was like, fuck, you know, who am I, right, to be in this space, right? Here is a leader who's so fiercely rooted in intuitive knowing about her community and what it needs. And we all sat together, her staff, her team, and I sat with them, and we sat with that question, and we were looking, we had this workbook from MEV, the self-care collective care workbook, and on the cover was the logo of MEV, of the geese in flight in V formation. And we looked at that and we talked about it, and we talked about what that meant. And then we paused, and this really emerged from the group of, what if it's not if I stop, people die, but it's if we stop, people die. What if we change that one word? What would that mean? And it just shifted the whole conversation from all about self-care to self-care and community care, and taking turns and moving forward as others move back, because I need to do that, right? I need to stop and pause and take a breath, and knowing that others are moving forward, and then I'll move forward as you move back. And it just opened up to such a beautiful third way to other possibilities. And I'm just so grateful for that moment. It really showed me what that means to hold the both and, the simultaneity of self-care and community care. So Latishia and ramelcy, I hear you, I see you, right, when you say the both, and how hard it is to hold such radical love. We can't do it indefinitely. We must pause, we must take turns. So I'm forever grateful for the learning and for all of you. And thank you. Thank you.
This is Priscilla speaking. Thank you, Michelle. So much it is that we've learned from each other around how do we stay in this movement for the long haul. MEV might have only been here for a dozen years, but we're gonna be in this for the rest of our lives, right? And so then how do we do that well and care for each other in that? I see in the chat that Maura wants to just lift it up into the space some of the other members of our, we're borrowing from the LJ Dream Team, the OG Dream Team. In addition to Michelle and Ingrid who are on the call, Marissa, Sujin, Elsa, Melinda, Jasmine, Viveka, Alyssa, Emmanuel, so many folks who stewarded the work, who often, you know, we were often holding the convening space, but in terms of the people who were walking alongside you day by day, one by one, holding your hands through all that, that was often the OD coaches, that OD team, such a big part of the way it is that we are trying to invest in the leadership of this group of people. I want to also name folks from this call. We have Pamela, Pooja, and Jasenia are on this call. And again, the same with Maura, there would not be an MEV without them. And they've held so much within this transition, with all of the, with all of the changes at Novo, and how the program is being held and where does it live in the ecosystem. And they've held this all with so much care and so much love, even as they were no longer at the foundation. And so it means so much to see you here, and hope that you are also feeling proud of what it is that we collectively created here together. And that the way that Elmo started, said that we're not doing this because of funding, or not doing this because we think philanthropy is going to save us. We do this because we are going to save us. because the care it is that we show each other is what's going to pull us through. And I see that we've always felt that from all of you. So thank you so much for being here. I'm in this phase, and we know that we will continue to stay in community. I welcome folks to add other names. I talked about Norma the first day that we started. I know Norma's in here all the time. Many folks are still, but Norma still continues to lead us. That Jackie was the person who brought me in. I want to include Jackie's name. Jackie's the person who took a chance on me as someone who had not been part of the MEV community before to bring me into this. Bringing in Pua, the core of beloved community, how much it is that Pua taught the community. I want to name Emily and Michelle. That help was so pivotal to how the program was designed. Sending them lots of love. I see lots of names in the chat, lots of reaffirmations of people. Oh, Chandra. I think folks who are here in New Mexico have seen the beautiful visual that Sandra and Kristen created around beloved community, and what does that actually mean and feel, and what is the world it is that we're building. It's everywhere. It inspires us. It continues to ground us from the very beginning. Of course, Ana Perez, Amate Perez, both on the design team and on the coaching team. She was the person, I think, who gave me the metaphor of MEV as a greenhouse. And what might that mean and look like? Elsa, Patti, of course, Trina. We were thinking we could try to get Trina to be on this call, but Trina's with the next generation of leaders doing her thing. Trina and Lorena, along with other folks holding down for the kids. I don't think we could say Patricia Torres's name enough times. This whole conversation on co-creating cultures of care, that there was a real pivot moment where Patricia was the one who would really call it in and say, there's a different way it is that we can do this work. And it's so lovely to see Patti on here as well. Other names, Sarah. Oh, so much love to Patti, Elsa. Of course, Lorena. Oh, Lon. Definitely Lon. Wani, Kindle, Anna. Gracie Boggs. Yes, want to bring them in and bring in ancestors' names. Claudia, of course. So much around Claudia and what it is that she made visible, what it is that our stories, our dreams, and made it something tangible for us. What a gift. Amy, Caitlin, oh, this is so lovely, y'all. Rachel, Sarah, so many people we want to bring in. Please continue to add folks to the chat. Thank you again for this conversation, for this opening up again of possibility, for this walk down memory lane in a lot of ways, and remembering how it is that we got here and what fortifies us for the road ahead.